In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 NBA games happening on February 19, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 NBA games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Brooklyn Nets versus Cleveland Cavaliers. The Brooklyn Nets head into Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse to take on the Cleveland Cavaliers on Thursday night. Both teams are coming out of a stretch that says a lot about where they are right now. The Nets just beat the Bulls, then turned around and lost to the Pacers, and they already have the Thunder looming on the schedule. They have dropped 16 of their last 20 games, which is the kind of skid that wears on a locker room, no matter how much players say they brush it off. There is a decent chance they finally roll into this one with something close to a full squad, and when a team that has been battered by losses gets healthy, there is usually a little spark early in games. Cleveland, on the other hand, just took care of the Nuggets and the Wizards, and they have the Hornets up next. They have won 10 of their last 11, which is the sort of heater that builds confidence and lets a coaching staff lean into what already works instead of scrambling for answers. They are watching Evan Mobley and Dean Wade as game time calls, and that matters for rim protection and spacing, but the overall form of this group still looks much more stable than what Brooklyn is showing. The last time these teams met, the Cavaliers walked out with a 131-124 win on the road. The margin was closer than many expected, which hints that the Nets do have enough shot-making to hang around when their offense cooperates, especially if their threes are falling early. That said, the broader trend has one team sinking while the other is rising, and those long arcs usually matter more than a single competitive box score. Brooklyn is averaging 107.7 points on 44.6% shooting while giving up 114.9 points on 49.3% shooting. They are hitting 34.4% from deep, 77.4% from the line, and pulling down 40.7 rebounds per game, while letting opponents knock down 37.5% of their threes. That combination of modest scoring, shaky efficiency, and leaky perimeter defense makes it hard for them to string together sustained runs, especially on the road. Cleveland is putting up 120 points per game on 47.6% shooting and allowing 115.9 on 46.3% shooting. They are shooting 35.8% from 3, 78.4% from the stripe, and grabbing 44.6 rebounds per game, while allowing 37.2% from beyond the arc. So you have a home team that scores more, shoots better, and controls the glass more consistently, facing a road team that has been trying to stop the bleeding for weeks. If the Nets come out hot, they can absolutely make this feel like a real contest for a while, especially if their shooters get comfortable early and force Cleveland to chase around the perimeter. But the more likely story is that the Cavaliers lean on their stronger offense, their rebounding edge, and their recent momentum to build an advantage, and then keep the game at arm's length. Over 4 quarters, with Brooklyn's recent form and Cleveland's current rhythm, the side that looks more likely to cover is the Cavaliers at home. As our first pick for this matchup, the Cleveland Cavaliers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. On paper, Cleveland's 120 points per game jump off the page, but they are doing it on efficient shooting rather than wild, breakneck pacing. Brooklyn sits at 107.7 points per game, which hints at long stretches of half-court offense, stalled possessions, and some choppy rhythm, especially when the ball sticks. Both teams allow a fair amount of scoring, with the Nets giving up 114.9 and the Cavaliers allowing 115.9, yet the shooting profiles and recent form do not automatically scream track meet. Brooklyn's 44.6% from the field with 34.4% from 3 suggests that when their shots are not falling, their offense can bog down without much free-flowing creativity to bail them out. Cleveland, although more efficient, can find themselves in grindy stretches too, especially if they are managing minutes or dealing with any in-game limitations for players like Mobley or Wade. The three-point numbers on both sides point to some volatility, with Brooklyn allowing 37.5% from deep and Cleveland giving up 37.2%. There can be short bursts where both sides trade long balls, but that kind of volley usually comes in pockets rather than 48 minutes of non-stop fireworks. Add in the way Brooklyn's struggles often show up in extended scoring droughts, and it becomes easier to imagine sequences where the game slows into long, defensive-minded possessions, even if the raw season totals look high. Rebounding is another piece that quietly nudges this toward a slightly more controlled scoring environment. Cleveland's 44.6 boards per game against Brooklyn's 40.7 creates opportunities to limit second-chance points for the Nets and squeeze the overall possession count. If the Cavaliers are finishing possessions cleanly and forcing Brooklyn to work through set defenses rather than runouts, that usually trims a few points off what could have been a more up-and-down game. All of that sets up a scenario where both teams score, but not quite at the pace suggested by their raw points-allowed lines, especially if Brooklyn's offense leans more conservative on the road and Cleveland is comfortable managing a lead instead of pushing the tempo. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Atlanta Hawks versus Philadelphia 76ers. The Atlanta Hawks head into Wells Fargo Center to take on the Philadelphia 76ers on Thursday night. Both teams are coming in with some baggage, and neither can really pretend they are rolling right now. The Hawks are coming off losses to the Timberwolves and Hornets, and they already have the heat waiting for them next. They have dropped 5 of their last 7 games, which starts to feel like a pattern more than a blip, even if the talent on the roster suggests they can play better. That kind of stretch can rattle confidence a bit, even if players keep saying the usual one game at a time lines. The 76ers are not exactly cruising either, with losses to the Trail Blazers and Knicks and the Pelicans on deck. They have lost 3 of their last 4, so there is some pressure on them too, especially in front of their own crowd. A home team that knows it has slipped recently often comes out with a little extra intensity, sometimes even more on defense than on offense. Atlanta is still without Jonathan Kuminga, which chips away at their flexibility in certain matchups. Philadelphia is monitoring Joel Embiid and Quentin Grimes as day-to-day, and any hint of limitation or absence for Embiid always hangs over a game like this. The uncertainty around those names shapes how both coaches think about rotations, but the bigger picture here still leans on how these groups have matched up already. These teams have met twice this season, and the Hawks have taken both meetings. The first one went all the way to double overtime, and the second was decided by just 3 points, which tells you that the gap between them on the floor has not looked huge so far. Games that tight often hinge on a couple of late possessions, a loose ball, or a single big three, and that can give the underdog some extra belief. The Hawks have oddly played some of their best basketball on the road this season and have strung together 7 straight wins against the 76ers. That streak includes a 2-0 mark this season, in both cases as the underdog. The 76ers have not beaten the Hawks since December 2023, which is a long time for a team that sees itself as the stronger side in this matchup. Even with all that history, the Hawks went into the break in shaky form, and it is hard to fully trust them right now, even if their ceiling on any given night is still fairly high. On paper, the 76ers still look like the more complete team, and being at home matters when you are trying to shake off a bad stretch and snap a specific head-to-head drought. It sets up a spot where Philadelphia has both motivation and structure, which is not a bad combination when you are facing an opponent you have not beaten in a while. The Hawks as underdogs are tempting, especially given the recent head-to-head record and their comfort on the road. But when you weigh the current form, the overall roster quality, and the home floor, the side that feels more likely to sneak out a narrow result and cover in the process is the 76ers. As our first pick for this matchup, the Philadelphia 76ers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Hawks bring a pretty lively scoring profile into this one, averaging 117.3 points on 47.2% shooting. They are hitting 37% from 3 and 77.4% at the free throw line, which gives them multiple ways to put points on the board when the offense is flowing. They are giving up 118.6 points on 47.6% shooting and allowing opponents to shoot 35.8% from deep while grabbing 42.2 rebounds per game. That mix of strong scoring and leaky defense usually hints at games that can open up, with both sides getting comfortable offensively for stretches. The 76ers are averaging 116.2 points on 46% shooting, which keeps them in that same neighborhood offensively. They are knocking down 35.6% of their threes and a very strong 81.6% from the free throw line. They are allowing 115.9 points on 47.1% shooting, with opponents hitting 35.5% from beyond the arc, while they pull down 43.3 rebounds per game. So both teams score well, both give up a fair amount, and both allow respectable three-point efficiency. When you have two offenses living in that 116 to 118 range and defenses that sit on the generous side of solid, it sets the stage for plenty of scoring opportunities. The Hawks' defense often struggles to get consistent stops, which can invite runs from the opponent but also tends to keep their own offense in attack mode just to keep pace. The 76ers, with their free throw accuracy, can add points even when the game slows, as trips to the line can quietly stack up the total. The three-point numbers on both sides add another layer. If the Hawks keep connecting at around 37% and the 76ers sit in the mid-30s, there is room for a few hot stretches where both teams trade jumpers and the scoreboard moves quickly. Even if the pace is not frantic from start to finish, pockets of quick scoring combined with efficient shooting can do a lot of work on the total. Rebounding also supports a healthy scoring environment here. Philadelphia's 43.3 boards per game versus Atlanta's 42.2 suggests there should be enough possessions and enough second-chance opportunities to keep offenses engaged. When neither side is consistently choking off extra chances, you often get a couple of extra putbacks, kick-out threes, or extended trips that tack on points over time. Put together, the strong offensive averages for both teams, the defensive numbers that are far from stingy, and the shooting percentages from deep and the stripe all hint toward a matchup where the scoreboard has every reason to stay busy. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Houston Rockets versus Charlotte Hornets. The Houston Rockets roll into Spectrum Center on Thursday night to take on the Charlotte Hornets. It is one of those games where the numbers say one thing, but the recent vibe hints at something a little different. The Rockets are coming off a mini back and forth with the Clippers, winning one and losing one, and they have the Knicks waiting for them next. They have split their last 6 games, which feels very on brand for a team still figuring out how high its ceiling really goes on a nightly basis. Some possessions look polished and confident, then a quarter later it can slip right back into rushed shots and stalled offense. The Hornets, meanwhile, dropped one to the Pistons, then bounced back with a win over the Hawks, and they have the Cavs coming up. They have won 10 of their last 11 games, which is not a fluke stretch anymore. It is a real run where habits start to harden in a good way. When a young team strings wins together like that, you can almost feel the swagger build with every clean defensive stand and every made three. Houston is still without Steven Adams and Fred VanVleet, which quietly matters on both ends, especially in terms of rebounding structure and late-game decision-making. Charlotte is still missing Liam McNeely, but there is a chance they get Kobe White on the floor for this one, and even the possibility of another playmaker tilts the rotation puzzle a bit. These two already saw each other once this season, with the Hornets taking that game on the road 109-99 back on February 1st. So it is at least a little eyebrow-raising to see the Rockets opening up as favorites again, given how that first matchup played out. On paper, the Rockets still grade out as the stronger overall roster, and that is why they are going to be favored in most numbers-based models. However, the Hornets have been one of the best teams in the league over roughly the last month, and that hot stretch is backed by the betting record too, now sitting at 33-22 against the spread. They already beat the Rockets on the road earlier this month as a 4.5-point underdog, which tells you the matchup itself is not a bad one for them. Houston has already stacked 13 losses on the road, and that kind of mark is not just bad luck. It usually speaks to some real issues traveling, handling opposing crowds, or closing tight games away from home. Charlotte, on the flip side, has managed to win outright in 3 of its last 4 games as an underdog, which is exactly the kind of pattern that makes them hard to ignore in this role. Before the season, the Hornets were a popular sneaky upside team in some circles, and it finally feels like that early optimism is paying off on the floor. Sure, the Rockets will absolutely be thinking about payback after that loss earlier in the month, and they have been playing solid basketball overall, but revenge angles only go so far when the other team is actually surging. Right now, the Hornets are on fire, playing with confidence, and this looks like another spot where they can restart their season rhythm with an upset at home. The Hornets are good. I will keep backing this young team that is clearly trending upward. As our first pick for this matchup, the Charlotte Hornets to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Houston is averaging 114.6 points per game on 47.1% shooting, which is solid, but not exactly all gas and no breaks. They are hitting 37% from beyond the arc and 75.5% at the free throw line, with 48.6 rebounds per game and opponents shooting 34.9% from deep. That profile leans toward a team that can control the glass and score efficiently, but it does not always translate into wild pace or non-stop fireworks. Charlotte is averaging 115.7 points per game on 46% shooting, which nudges them slightly higher on the scoreboard but not by a huge leap. They are connecting on 37.3% of their threes and a strong 82.1% from the free throw line, while allowing 113.8 points on 47.2% shooting. They are giving up 36.5% from beyond the arc and grabbing 46 rebounds per game. So both sides can clearly score, but both also give up enough clean looks that games can slide into stretches of trading half-court possessions instead of constant transition bursts. The three-point percentages on both teams sit in that sweet spot where shooting can look impressive without necessarily blowing the game wide open. If the Rockets sit around 37% from deep and the Hornets hover just above that, you are likely to see selective flurries of scoring rather than 48 minutes of non-stop bombing. Rebounding numbers, especially Houston's 48.6 boards, also hint at plenty of one-and-done possessions for the Hornets when the Rockets are locked in on the glass. Charlotte's defense does allow a fair amount at 47.2% from the field and 36.5% from three, but when they clean the defensive glass and get to the line on the other end, the game can slow just enough to trim a few total points. Houston allowing under 110 points per game on 45.8% shooting shows that their defense has some teeth, even while their offense stays competent rather than explosive. That kind of balance often drags a game into a more controlled rhythm, especially when both teams are coming out of a break and trying to re-establish structure. With two capable offenses, but also two defenses that can at least force some tough looks and limit easy second chance points, the expectation tilts more toward a solid scoring output without drifting into a full track meet. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Indiana Pacers versus Washington Wizards. The Indiana Pacers and the Washington Wizards meet at Capital One Arena on Thursday night for a matchup between two teams that have taken their share of lumps this season. Recent form has not exactly inspired a ton of trust on either side, but someone still has to walk out of there with a ticket-cashing performance. The Pacers coming off wins over the Knicks and Nets, with the Wizards up again on the schedule, and yet they have still dropped 8 of their last 13. That kind of record paints a picture of a team that has been wobbling, even if they have done just enough lately to keep from falling completely out of rhythm. You can feel that they are hanging on, more surviving than thriving, but they are at least finding pockets of competence when it matters. The Wizards, for their part, are in an even rougher spot, coming off losses to the Cavs and Heat before seeing the Pacers again. They have lost 43 of their last 59 games, which is the sort of long-term slide that wears on everything, from the fan base to the energy in the huddles. Once losing becomes that familiar, it takes a lot to flip the script, and opponents know it too. Indiana is still without Tyrese Halliburton, Obi Toppin, and Johnny Furphy, and that clearly trims some playmaking, depth, and versatility out of the rotation. Washington has ruled out Anthony Davis, Trae Young, Cam Whitmore, and Alex Sarr, so their injury report looks like a full page by itself. With that many key names sitting, you are essentially asking the remaining Wizards pieces to punch above their usual roles for extended stretches. You would not feel overly confident backing either team right now, and that is just being honest. Still, the Pacers deserve a bit of credit for at least keeping their heads above water, stealing wins where they can, and not completely sliding into free fall. The Wizards have managed to surprise a few opponents this season, but this version of the roster is so banged up that it feels like an uphill climb from the opening tip. Given the injuries and the way both sides have been trending, this sets up as a spot where Indiana can lean on their slightly steadier core, even without their own missing pieces. On the road, it is rarely comfortable, but this looks like a game where the Pacers can take advantage of a depleted Washington group, grind through some ugly stretches, and still find enough separation to get the win and cover. As our first pick for this matchup, the Indiana Pacers to win and cover the spread as favorites is our full game side pick. The Pacers are averaging 111.2 points per game on 44.9% shooting, which suggests that when they get into a rhythm, they can still put up decent numbers. They are hitting 34.7% from beyond the arc and 76.7% at the free throw line. They allow 118.6 points per game on 48.3% shooting, give up 34.6% from three, and grab 42.7 rebounds per night. That combination of decent offense and porous defense usually nudges games upward on the scoreboard. The Wizards, for all their issues, still average 112.2 points per game on 45.6% shooting. They are shooting 35.4% from deep and 77.1% at the stripe. On the other side of the ball, they are allowing a hefty 123.1 points per game on 47.8% shooting. Opponents are hitting 36.6% from three against them, and they are pulling down 43.5 rebounds per game. This is not the statistical profile of a team dragging opponents into defensive slugfests. When both defenses are this leaky, the bar for an offensive possession to become points is not particularly high. Indiana's tendency to give up clean looks and Washington's habit of surrendering big numbers create a shared environment where even short bursts of competence can balloon the total. Even with some main pieces missing, the remaining players often get more usage, more shots, and more freedom, which can actually inflate scoring, especially if transition chances appear off missed shots and turnovers. The three-point percentages on both teams sit in the mid-30s, which is enough to punish slow rotations and late closeouts. If either side strings together a couple of hot stretches from beyond the arc, the game can tilt quickly into a higher scoring rhythm, especially if neither defense consistently tightens the screws. Rebounding numbers that sit in the low 40s for both groups also point to plenty of possessions, as neither side is built to choke the game into a crawl. With the Pacers allowing well over 118 points on average and the Wizards surrendering an even larger number, the most reasonable expectation is that both teams find ways to score, even if some of that scoring comes off broken plays and defensive lapses. It shapes up as the kind of matchup where the offenses do not need to be perfect, they just need to be competent, because the defensive resistance is not exactly unforgiving. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Detroit Pistons versus New York Knicks. The Detroit Pistons head into Madison Square Garden to take on the New York Knicks on Thursday night. It feels like one of those games where the marquee says Knicks, but the team everyone has quietly started circling might actually be Detroit. The Pistons come in off wins against the Hornets and Raptors, with the Bulls up next. They have won 12 of their last 15 games, which is wild when you remember how shaky things looked earlier in the season. That kind of surge does not happen by accident. It usually means the habits, rotations, and chemistry have finally started to click. The Knicks, for their part, beat the 76ers, then fell to the Pacers, and now have the Rockets waiting after this one. They have won 10 of their last 12 games, so they are hardly stumbling into this matchup either. Both sides are playing the kind of basketball that makes fans think, yeah, we might actually be onto something here. Detroit might again be without Ronald Holland II, which trims a bit of their depth and energy on the wings. New York has already ruled out Miles McBride, and OG Anunoby is listed as day-to-day, which nudges their defensive ceiling and versatility just a bit. These teams have already met twice this season, and the Pistons did more than just edge the Knicks. They flat-out crushed them in both games. The Knicks are still going to get plenty of respect at home, where they are 21-7 straight up. MSG gives them a real edge. The crowd, the comfort, the routines, it all matters, especially for a team that already believes it belongs among the stronger groups in the conference. But the Pistons have turned into one of those teams that simply shows up the same way whether they are in Detroit or on the road. Detroit has already smashed New York by 38 points earlier this month, which is the sort of result you do not just ignore when you look at this matchup again. The Pistons have taken 3 of the last 4 against the Knicks, which starts to look like a matchup trend rather than a weird one-off. Since October 29, the Pistons are 8-0 against the spread and straight up as an underdog. They are also 11-2 against the spread in their last 13 games in that same role, and that is the sort of run that tells you the market keeps doubting them a little longer than it should. The Knicks are still one of the hottest teams in the league coming into this contest, and there is no doubt they will be looking for revenge after getting embarrassed earlier in the month. But Detroit has handled the Knicks on the defensive end in those meetings, made life uncomfortable, and forced them into the kind of shots that stall an offense. When one team keeps proving it can bother you in the same ways, it is hard to just assume that flips overnight. So even with New York's home record and current momentum, the Pistons remain too steady and too reliable in this underdog role to casually fade. If anything, their consistency and recent dominance in this head-to-head matchup make them feel like the side you would rather have in your pocket catching points. As our first pick for this matchup, the Detroit Pistons to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. The Pistons are averaging 117.3 points on 48% shooting, which is a very healthy offensive profile. They are hitting 34.9% from 3 and 75.6% from the free throw line. They allow 109.3 points on 44.1% shooting, give up 34.7% from deep, and pull down 45.6 rebounds per game. That kind of stat line suggests something interesting. They score well, shoot well, and rebound well, yet their points allowed are relatively modest compared to some of the higher-scoring teams. It hints at a style where they can put up numbers, but still keep things organized enough defensively that games do not always explode into chaos. The Knicks are averaging 118 points on 47.2% shooting. They are hitting 37.8% from beyond the arc and 79% from the free throw line, which gives them a nice blend of perimeter and free throw efficiency. On defense, they are allowing 111.9 points on 45.9% shooting. Opponents are shooting 35.7% from 3 against them, and the Knicks are grabbing 46.3 rebounds per game. So both teams sit in a range where the offenses are clearly capable, but the defenses are not pushovers. Rebounding sits strong on both sides, with Detroit's 45.6 boards and New York's 46.3, which usually trims down second chance scoring a bit. When both teams can close possessions on the glass, it often means fewer wild, extended sequences where extra points sneak onto the board. The three-point numbers also tell a fairly controlled story. Detroit hovering around 34.9% and New York around 37.8% means there is real shooting on display, but not the kind that automatically triggers a shootout every night. If either team cools off even a little from deep, the game can slide into more mid-range and paint-oriented possessions that chew up clock. Defensively, the Pistons sitting at 109.3 points allowed and the Knicks at 111.9 creates a combined picture of two groups that, while not elite, do enough to avoid constant track meets. If both sides lean into their half-court sets, which often happens in a more physical game at Madison Square Garden, possessions can feel longer, more deliberate, and more selective. That kind of rhythm tends to keep totals in check, especially when both teams have enough defensive structure to at least contest the first good look. So even though the offensive averages look appealing, the mix of solid rebounding, competent defense, and the potential for a more measured tempo points more toward a controlled scoring environment than a pure fireworks show. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.